Grab your stuffies! Welcome to my first ever top 10 video where I will discuss things that are my favorite or least favorite about a certain game or game franchise. So, without further ado, let's begin. Cue intro. So, for my first top 10 video, we'll be discussing my top 10 favorite Resident Evil games. Now, I'd like to warn you guys, there will be spoilers. So if you guys have not completed all the Resident Evil games or don't want to be spoiled by anything, turn away now. Starting us off at number 10, we have Resident Evil 0. Things I loved about Resident Evil 0, the characters. Rebecca and Billy have great chemistry. I would still love to see Billy come back again. It's a shame that he hasn't. And Resident Evil tends to do that a lot. They bring new characters into the fold, and you start to like them, and then they're never to be seen again. And another thing I love is the way that it set up Resident Evil 1 and the other Resident Evil games as well, because even William Birkin was mentioned. So that was fantastic. I thought the setting in Resident Evil 0 was great. You got to explore the train, which was creepy. You got to explore several facilities and labs, which was awesome. It just had such a eerie feeling to it, and it was scary. It was awesome. It was perfect. The things I didn't like about Resident Evil 0, though, was that the character switching was just, it felt tedious, and it almost felt like it should have been a multiplayer game, but it wasn't. The item management was awful. Each character could only hold 6 items, and then several items took up 2 spaces, and then you had to carry that stupid hook shot with you pretty much through the whole game, because you needed it 4 times, I think. Yeah, 4 times. Yeah, anyways, something like that. And it was just ridiculous. Like, why couldn't I just use it once and get rid of it? And if I was going to need it 4 times, couldn't you just taken up 1 space, please? And I spent so much of my time playing through that game, like carrying stuff from one spot to another, dropping it, and then carrying it from one place back to another and dropping it, and just having it all in one spot so I don't have to keep running back and forth. That'd take up most of my playthrough, just doing that. Because I like to, hoard my resources. I felt like the enemies in Resident Evil 0 were also very unbalanced, such as the monkeys. I can't remember what they're called, but they could actually stun lock you and prevent you from actually doing anything to help to get out of a sticky situation. Like, I remember one time I was playing, and I was in that room with the it was like the animal puzzle in like the dungeon area. And I didn't know the monkeys were in that room at the time, because it was my first time playing. And I go down there, and I'm there aiming my shotgun, because I see them, and they come over to me and swipe me. And then I stagger, and then I try to pull up my shotgun again to shoot, and he swipes me again, and I stagger again. And it's just a repetitive staggering, and I couldn't actually do anything. And I was like, well, this isn't fun, and then I died. And I had to start over, and I forgot to save it too, so that's a little bitter towards that. As for number 9, we've got Resident Evil, the original. This is the game that started it all. So had it not been for this game, I don't feel like Resident Evil would be even at the peak that it is right now. So you've got to give this game credit. It's got such a nostalgic feel when you play it too. It's got such weird charm to it because it's supposed to be scary, but the dialogue's so bad that it makes it kind of funny and humorous, but it also just makes you love it even more. I don't even know how that works, but it works perfectly. The game is scary too. I remember when I played this as a kid, I was having nightmares. And it's funny because the graphics aren't that fantastic. If you replay it, you realize the 2 zombies in the game are basically the green shirt or the lab coat. Isn't that crazy? And the game's pretty hard too. If you guys watch my Let's Play, the hunters killed me 3 or 4 times in that playthrough, and I've played the game before. Isn't that kind of sad? But hey, I enjoy a challenge. Story and soundtrack, of course, were awesome. My favorite track from the whole soundtrack was when you are down in the, I don't know what it's called, like the pool area with the sharks. It's like doom 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 doom. I don't know. I love that. I love that soundtrack. I'm not sure if this is actually the case, but I feel like Resident Evil was the first game that actually gave you different main character options that actually had different playthroughs and different ways to play, different items they could get. If that correct, is that the first game that's ever done it? Because that's fantastic. Because they did that so well. And especially the fact that you played Jill and it was kind of an easier mode, and then you played as Chris and it was more of like the harder difficulty. Because that was fantastic. And the fact that they both got different, semi-different endings was really cool as well. So there are only a couple things that bother me about the original Resident Evil game. One is the fact that you can't aim up or down. And so there would be a couple cases where I would shoot a zombie down, and it would be on the ground, but you had to wait till it got back up before you could shoot it again. And I think another problem with the original is, and I'll get into this in further detail later on, but the remake exists. So it's like, do you really want to play the original when the remake exists? Because I feel like the remake is so much better. And I feel like it's actually a hindrance towards it. And it doesn't make the original bad or anything. It's just the remake is superior in every way. So it's like, do you really want to play the original, or do you want to play the remake? Because it's pretty much better in every way. For my number 8 spot, well, you guys might give me some hate for this, but Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. I was never a huge fan of this game. After I replayed it, I realized I learned to appreciate it more. I think Nemesis is still one of the best villains in the Resident Evil games, like enemies to face, because he is relentless. He stalks you everywhere, in almost every room you go in. I remember when I was playing through this again and I was going through the police station, I didn't remember that he went through each door in the police station. So you were trying to go in like the file cabinet room and try to open up those locks and stuff. And he's there with you in that tiny room. It's terrifying. They did such a good job with Nemesis in Resident Evil 3, the original. I wish it was the case for the remake. So the best part about Resident Evil 3, Nemesis, in my opinion, is the fact that there are choices you can make. And depending on what choices you make, determine what outcomes happen. Like, it depends, it determines if there's going to be zombies in the next room waiting for you, or, you know, zombie dogs. It's so cool and innovative. Like, oh, I wish the remake did this kind of stuff. So it was also cool that you could actually take out Nemesis at certain points and actually get items from him that would greatly help with your journey through Raccoon City. I do, however, have a problem with that, in that he is basically impossible to take down, especially if you play on hard mode and you've just got the handgun. You have to learn how to dodge his attacks completely. And that's another problem I have. The dodge mechanic is so gimmicky, and it's so badly done, in my opinion. Like, I just don't have great experience with it. I've tried to do it several times, and it just never seems to work right. And that's a shame, because, like, oh, I really wanted to see, like, all the stuff I could get from Nemesis, but I have never done it. I've never done it, and I would like to, but it's really hard to do. All right, my last gripe with the game, and I'm also going to get hate for this too. So I love Mercenaries mode. Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, the Mercenary mode is just not as fun to me. Please don't come for me. I mean, Nikolai had just a knife, right? And then you could play as Carlos with a handgun and an assault rifle, I believe. And then you could play as Nikolai, who had a whole arsenal, a handgun, shotgun, and magnum, I think. And he essentially was basically the easier way to play. It was basically hard, or it was basically easy, normal, hard, kind of with the characters, it seemed like. But man, you had to really play that so many times to unlock all the cool weapons and stuff for the main game. And I got to the point where I got the infinite rocket launcher and called it quits. I was like, I am not working towards getting these other items. It was so repetitive too, it felt like. None of it was really that different. And I sucked at it. I'm much better at the other Mercenaries games. All right, so for number 7, again, you guys are gonna hate me because I put this above Nemesis, but Resident Evil 5. So I know this game is not liked by a lot of people, or Resident Evil fans anyway, but I personally love this game. It has one of the best co-op experiences I've ever had in a video game. I could play this game for hours, days with somebody because it's so much fun. There's so many different weapons to choose from. There's different modes like mercenaries and versus, and all the cool DLC like what's the one with Chris and Jill? Something nightmares. It was cool to have Chris and Wesker finally battle it out to the death. Been a long time coming. It is kind of sad that Wesker's gone, but it was necessary. Only gripe I had with that is in Chapter 5-3, after you rescue Jill, Sheva should have said, okay, Jill, you and Chris go ahead and go to Wesker. Me and Josh will find an escape route. Because it should have been Chris and Jill versus Wesker, not Chris and Sheva. I don't have a problem with Sheva. That's not what I'm saying. I love Sheva as a character. I hope she comes back. But Chris and Jill were the ones that have dealt with Wesker their entire time working with stars. They should have been the ones to kill him, not Sheva. Sorry. That's just how I feel. That's what should have happened. And I think the game would have been enjoyed and liked by a lot more people if that was the case. I'm sure many people read the files in Resident Evil 5, but what I read from the files, when you find those flowers underground, it actually seemed like the entire virus of the entire series came from those flowers. And that to me was really cool how it kind of dived deeper into the history of where this virus came from, because ultimately you never really understood directly, you never really understood exactly where this virus came from and how it started. You kind of know how it started, but where it came from exactly. And it came from these flowers that are growing underground. And so that was a nice feature for Resident Evil 5, and that gave it some extra points in my book. Okay, I hate QTEs. Resident Evil 5 had way too many of them. And there wasn't even that many, but it still was way too many for me. I don't like them at all. I think Resident Evil 3 Remake had too many QTEs, and there was only like 3 or 4. But I don't like them. I wish they would just go away. So now I said that I love this game because of the co-op feature, and that's true. But playing single player, it is not as fun. The AI is not helpful. The fact that you have to worry about keeping them alive as well as yourself is very difficult because, first of all, the item space is you each only get 9 items, and you have to hold your bullets, your ammo, your defense, your grenades, and your health items, and it's a lot. It is a lot to carry. So I think the inventory could have used a little bit of an upgrade as well as the AI of your partner. The main reason for me why the game is so low on the list, and I'm sure why it's low on many people's lists, is the fact that the game is not scary at all, and the setting is boring. Oh my god. I can't really think of one area. Okay, I like the swamp area, but other than that, I didn't care for really any of the areas in it. And I also hated that gun, the turret gun level. The level sucks, and I hate levels like that. All right, our number 6 spot goes to Resident Evil 7. And my god, was this a pleasant surprise to me, because I had just played this game a couple of years ago. I played it a little while after it was, after it came out, I mean. And I waited for a while because I just didn't feel like I was going to enjoy it that much. But once I finally played it, I fell in love with this game. It was scary. I thought the story was awesome, even knowing I have no connection to Ethan, which is one of the problems I have with it. But regardless of that, it was still just told such a good story, and it had a lot of twists to it. Like, again, spoilers, the fact that like Lucas kind of broke out of Evelyn's hold a little bit, and he just was kind of crazy. He was psychotic, and he was kind of trying to give information back to Umbrella, I believe. And the twist that Evelyn was actually the grandma the whole time. I don't know about everybody else, but I didn't see that coming at all. I really thought it was just a grandma in the family. and that Evelyn was just like this ghost. It was such a good twist. I actually didn't have a problem with the first person view either, like a lot of people did. I thought it made the game a little bit more scary and a little bit more personal too. It kind of felt like you were in the moment. I didn't play it on VR though, and I heard that was much scarier. I don't actually have VR, so. But I didn't mind the first person view, and I'm kind of looking forward to Resident Evil Village because, well, I mean, the first person view is just a nice change of pace. The DLC was awesome. I really enjoyed Chris's extra storyline, and I enjoyed Zoe Baker's, I think his the uncle, his storyline. I even like Zoe's DLC, where you get to find out like what happened with the family after they found Evelyn. It was the coolest thing ever. Oh my god! Like the DLC for Resident Evil 7 just gave you so much more of a backstory for this family that has just been traumatized by this little girl, and the aftermath of it as well after you beat the game. Like the DLC was done so well. I cannot praise it enough. And it even had some fun mini games to it, like the game where you're getting Jack sweets and drinks and stuff and getting points for it. It was so weird, but it's fun. The game is so good. Now, I think that Resident Evil 7 had the perfect first half of the game. However, right after you kill Marguerite Baker and you start, well, more like after you get I believe it's the head of the serum that you needed to get or something from Evelyn's bedroom. After you get out of there and you start Lucas's section, the game just kind of starts going a little downhill for me. I think Lucas's section, well, I get that they were trying to go for a little bit more of the psychological horror, but it was more of just kind of boring. It didn't grab me in and pull me in as it did with Jack and Marguerite. And the area you explored was really boring. It was just plain white like area with just a couple explosives you just shot. And the ship was boring as well. And then the fact that you have to go through the ship basically twice with a character who has like no resources. Hey. Last problem I have with Resident Evil 7 is just the fact that the enemies are so limited. I think there's only 3 different enemies in the whole game. I would like to have seen a little bit more variety, as well as more. There's hardly any enemies in the game. So, yeah, that's all I got to really say about Resident Evil 7. Number 5 spot goes to Resident Evil 4. Now, the main issue I have with Resident Evil 4, and I'm sure you guys are mad that I have it so low on the list, but to me, it's a fantastic game. But it's not a fantastic Resident Evil game. And it is the reason why 5 and 6 ended the way they did. That's kind of how I feel. But other than that, I do love Resident Evil 4. I think the setting is good. I think the gameplay is so much fun. The DLC is great. Playing as Ada and watching how she helped Leon along the way. It's fantastic. The mercenary mode, loved it. Had a lot of fun with it. I enjoyed the weapon choices and the amount of weapons that you could find and unlock, which was cool. There was great inventory management. I think I spent hours just moving stuff around and making it look nice in my little suitcase. Resident Evil 4 also had a lot of replayability because there were so many different hidden treasures you could find that you've missed your first playthrough, like myself. Even if I bought the treasure map, sometimes I still missed treasures along the way, and so I was excited to jump back into it and find the treasures that I missed, and also to get money to buy those awesome infinite rocket launcher, the Chicago typewriter. Okay, so the cons I have for Resident Evil 4, Ashley's annoying, and I wish she could at least do a little bit more than just scream and stand in my way and I shoot her. I've shot her so many times because she just stands in front of me and I'm trying to shoot enemies. Get the hell out of my way. Krauser? I thought Krauser was a fantastic addition to the game, but why didn't we get a backstory for him? We had no connection to who the hell Krauser was. And we didn't get that until Resident Evil Darkside Chronicles for the Wii, which came out several years later. I thought the castle was a little bit too long of an area, and I also felt like the game just I kind of touched on this a little bit already, but the game just was a little too different from the original Resident Evil games, and it kind of pushed me away, honestly. Like the enemies in the game, it was the start of something different as far as the series went, because the enemies weren't zombies. They were controlled by parasites. And that's different because usually you think Resident Evil, you think zombies. And that just kind of threw you for a little curveball. Oh, number 4. This game, I absolutely love this game so much. And I honestly wish I could put it higher on my list, but I can't because I just feel like 1, 2, and 3 are much better. The number 4 spot goes to Resident Evil Code Veronica X. This game has some of the best villains in the series. I mean, Alfred and Alexia are so freaking weird that they're kind of funny, and you kind of just can't help but enjoy them as characters because they have such a rich backstory. And the whole theme of the game, brother and sister relationships, and I think the game did such a good job, with Claire and Chris, and then Alexia and Alfred. It was a very good theme for the game, and it was different from 1 and 2 and 3. Resident Evil Code Veronica, hands down, has the best places to explore in the whole series. You get to go to frickin' Antarctica, and you get to go to labs and training facilities and mansions and dungeons. It's so cool. However, I do think the game's a little too long. Man, I remember when I was trying to unlock the unlimited rocket launcher and you had to beat the whole game without saving it once. And the game's basically like 2 full Resident Evil games into one, if you think about it. Man, that was a challenge. I think Resident Evil Code Veronica is hands down the hardest Resident Evil game to play. It was great to see Chris and Claire finally reunite. That was a long time coming, and a lot of people waited for that. I think it has one of the best soundtracks. I mean, the save theme is still my favorite track from any Resident Evil game. It was perfect. The Wesker and Chris fight is pretty cool. I enjoyed it. It's a little corny, but I really enjoyed it because this is what set Chris up to look the way he does in Resident Evil 5. He got his ass kicked in Resident Evil Code Veronica. It made him want to get stronger and bigger so that he could take down Wesker. Nosferatu is freaking awesome. I wish his boss fight was a little more epic because it was kind of like a unexpected kind of thing, and I wish he was more a part of the story and the game itself. But he is so cool. He is such a cool boss. There are a couple problems I do have with the game, such as Steve. To me, Steve is so unlikable. He is so annoying. I actually don't even understand why they gave him and Claire kind of like this little bit of a love thing going on, because he's such a wimp and he's annoying. And I don't even know how Claire put up with him, to be honest. And I also hate his boss fight. It's just a chase scene, and there's really no way for you not to get hit, so you have to have health on hand. Otherwise, you can't beat it. And that is just stupid. Why would they do that? I hope if they ever remake the game, they fix that and make it an actual boss fight. Oh, I hope they remake Code Veronica so bad. I love that game so much. I'm just worried if they remade it, and I just complained that it would be too long. I wouldn't want them to shorten it so much. Like, I do feel like the game itself, the original, is a little too long, but I don't think it's necessarily needs to be changed. You know what I mean? Like, it's too long, but I still don't think it needs to be changed. I still think it's perfect the way it is. Maybe tweak little things here and there, but overall I think it's pretty perfect. Okay, so this was one of the hardest things to decide, was numbers 2 and 3, because I go back and forth on this all the time, but number 3, I decided to give to Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, the main reason I gave it to the remake and not the original, which I'm going to tell you right now, number 2 is the original, but we'll go with the remake. We'll talk about the remake first. So, the problem with the remake is just the storytelling. I just feel like it's not nearly as good as the original was. I mean, the character interactions between Claire and Leon and Sherry and Ada were so much better and well done in the original than they were in the remake that it kind of hurts it by a lot. However, the graphics, the gameplay, Mr. X, that made remake so good. And that almost made it put it ahead of the original for me, but it didn't. I actually liked the fact that the music was quiet in the remake also. I love the soundtrack of the original, but in the remake, you actually could just hear the sounds of the zombies and like the growling, and you could hear Mr. X's footsteps like upstairs right above you, or maybe he was right out the hall. You couldn't really tell, but you could hear him, and so it kind of built up like the suspense, like, oh my god, should I walk out of the save room, or is he gonna be right there? Or they did that so well, because I tried playing the game, listening to the original soundtrack, and it just doesn't feel the same. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just, I feel like it just kind of overpowers the environment. Okay, so there was a lack of enemies in the remake. I mean, there were no spiders, no crows, which I guess essentially that's really all they took out, I think, of the original, but still, it just felt a little empty as far as enemies go. And I enjoyed that the enemies were a little tougher than they were in the original. However, I didn't like the fact that zombies took 10 shots to the head and they would still be moving and be perfectly fine. That's ridiculous and unrealistic, because you shoot a zombie in the head and it's a bullet. It'll go through their rotting flesh, okay? Okay, well, as I said earlier, number 2 goes to Resident Evil 2 Original. I kind of touched base a little bit of it already, but the thing I loved the best was the fact that the story was told so much better than the remake. The way that you kind of interacted with each other as far as Claire and Leon goes, and the fact that items were, when you took them as Leon, then Claire couldn't get that certain item. Each playthrough felt different, whereas the remake, they felt exactly the same. In the original, they didn't. So each character had their own boss, their own path, as far as story part A and part B goes, is what I mean. So I think that was fantastic. And I do love the soundtrack of the original game. I just feel like it was kind of like the quietness of the remake made it a little scarier. Now, that's not to say the original isn't scary, because the 2 original is terrifying as well. And there are so many enemies. My gosh, if you play the game, I think it's on normal, and you go into that hallway with the police office, there's like 10 zombies just waiting for you, and you just got a handgun. So it's great. I love it. Okay, so now I know a lot of people have the problem with the remake in that all the items are basically picked up twice. But if you play the original, that same thing happens. Like, you still pick up the club key. I think you pick up the club key twice. You pick up the diamond key twice. You pick up the spade key twice. It's very similar to how the original was. So you can't really say that that's a problem. I will say the remake also had some items that were missing that the original had, like the crossbow. As weak as that thing was fun to use. Why would they take that out? I loved the crossbow. It was fun. So Resident Evil 2 Remake, and Code Veronica all have one thing in common that help make them so high up on my list, and that's Claire Redfield. She's the best character in the series, in my opinion. I think it's cool the fact that she doesn't have any of this training like Chris and Leon and Jill all have. She's kind of different from that, and she's kind of this like motherly almost figure, or big sister figure. She's more of a big sister than a mother. But She's just more of like a person as opposed to somebody trained and hired to do this sort of thing. She's just kind of put into it and she just does it with no problems, no hesitation. Awesome. Before I talk about my number one, I'll mention some honorable mentions. So my number 10 spot almost didn't go to Resident Evil 0. It almost went to Resident Evil Revelations 1. But then I thought, well, maybe it should go to Revelations 2. And then I thought, no, I like 1 better. And I thought, wait, no, I like 2 better. And I said, you know what? The things I liked about Revelations 1 weren't in Revelations 2. And the things that I liked about Revelations 2 weren't in Revelations 1. So I almost feel like if those two were to connect and be one game, it would have been perfect. So like Revelations 1, the problem I had with it was the characters were so boring, besides Chris and Jill. Like I didn't care about any of the other characters. However, Revelations 2, I think the characters were fantastic. And then Revelations 1, I think the pacing was fantastic. The chapters were short. And then Revelations 2, I thought the chapters were way too long. So it's like those are the two main things. Had they just combined them, it would have been perfect. So that's why those weren't on number 10. But my number 1 spot, you guys haven't guessed already, I'm sure you guys know, Resident Evil Remake, the best game in the series, without a doubt. I don't know any other remake in any other video game franchise where the remake is better than the original in every single way. That is my personal opinion. In every single aspect, the remake is better than the original. It adds more enemies. It adds a new villain, Lisa Trevor, who is amazing and my favorite, like, Resident Evil lore enemy in the entire series. The mansion is still the creepiest setting in all the series. And they even added Crimson Heads. They made the zombies harder to kill. And you know what? If you're a new player and you don't know that, you're screwed. Because those things are so hard to kill. Now, the only con I have with the remake, and it's very small, and it's the same problem I have with the original, I just didn't mention it. It's a very small problem. Why is there not an ending where Barry and Rebecca, Jill and Chris are all on the helicopter? Because Barry and Rebecca both make it out of that mansion alive. So there should have been an ending where all 4 of them were on that helicopter. And like I said, that is a very minimal problem I have. Other than that, Resident Evil Remake is a 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 game. It's perfect. I love that game so much. Even if the replayability isn't as great as other games, I don't care. It's done so well. Guys, that is my top 10 Resident Evil games. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what your top 10 Resident Evil games are. And I look forward to hearing from you guys and letting me know what other top 10s you guys would like to see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, bye.